I think about what's happening in our world right now, and COVID-19, people are losing their jobs, they're losing loved ones, there's civic unrest, there's political messaging that's happening, and people are confused or feel shamed, or there's so many messages going around. So people really need to have hope, but they need to understand that there's healing in being vulnerable. When I think about, because I am familiar with your story, you said you were in legislation, and I remember how you talked about the day that you found out that your son took his life. And, you know, you were in this very prominent position, you had a lot of influence, and you felt like your world was shattered. How did you regain that sense of wholeness?
Well, I look back now and I don't know that I ever had wholeness, Rebecca. You know, to be fair and honest and open, is like I really have spent a lot of time in my own life over the last 10 years in investing in my healing process. I am a natural kind of person for healing, so I have not invested in any kind of prescription drugs or anything like that. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just have chosen not to go that route. What I did choose to is that I went through post-traumatic stress therapy. I did cognitive thought therapy. I invested in energy healing and um, emotional healing. And so, and the more I invested in my healing, the more I realized that, oh my gosh, there's a light within me that I didn't even know that I had a light. And brought up COVID and all the civic unrest and the political unrest and everything that's happening today. All of this is triggering past traumas in people's lives. So they're not only going through the sudden and unexpected losses that they're going through, whether it's job or anything else, um, and it's also triggering past experiences that they haven't really processed through. So the way people respond today to the sudden and unexpected losses that are occurring is how they were taught to respond to safety, security, you know, all of the primal, you know, the emotions as a child, how they were taught to respond to their life from 0 to 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so what my son's transition did was not only did it shatter me, but it also shattered me together. And it did that in a sense that I was able to not only process through my trauma of my son's suicide and the fact that he wrote a note saying he didn't want me at his service,
Wow.
um, that there was a lot of trauma there, but I was processing that and I wasn't feeling better, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't feeling better. And I realized through my hour a week investment that I had early childhood trauma that I had never really dealt with. Now, I'd read all kinds of self-help books. I had become successful when no one thought I could ever become successful. I had moved my way up through my coping skills that I had learned. Like, I'll prove to you I can do whatever I want to do. Watch me, you know, even though
Mm-hmm.
I, you know, didn't have much from the beginning, or I didn't even go to college until I was a government official working for the governor. You know,
Wow.
like I was a legislator and an appointee, and I hadn't gone to college at that point. I do have a college degree now, but I was in my 40s when I
Mm-hmm.
got my college degree. And so no one thought that I could do what I did, but I did it because I had this drive within me. I'm like, I am not going to live the way I knew what life could be as a very young child. Unfortunately, I had a stepdad that came into my life that adopted me and is amazing. Um, but my first 8 years of my life was not a smooth ride. So how I responded to life was how I was taught to respond at that early age.
Wow, it's like that flight or fight, you know, that like you said, that it's almost like a primitive response that we have. When you said between 0 to 8 years old, what were some limiting beliefs that you felt that you um, kind of held inside that you didn't realize until you went through that healing process?
Well, one of the things that I experienced as a child, now I can't remember if it was 3 or 4, but I was a young child. My birth father came home drunk one night and was abusive, and ended up shooting at my mom and my sister and I as we are, sheltering in the bathroom.
Wow.
and
Wow.
and my mom and sister were in the bathtub, and my mom put me between the toilet and the wall. And at that moment, not only was my father shooting at us, but I was programmed at that moment like I wasn't worthy enough to be in the bathtub. Now
Oh, wow.
that was not at all what my mom did. There was enough room to put him in the bathtub and me like I was the younger one, so I could fit in between the toilet and the wall. Like,
Right.
it's crazy, but what a 3 and 4-year-old's brain was programmed was like I wasn't worthy or lovable enough to be safe, to be in the bathtub with my mom, like there's all these things that my brain was not able to process in a
Mm-hmm.
logical adult way. um, and so the limiting beliefs or blocks that were stuck in my body was just from that one story. There's
Mm-hmm.
plenty more, but from that one story was, also the cops came and my mom sent the cops away because he had passed out. And at the time, she sent them away because she was scared that she wouldn't be able to keep her kids safe or feed them if he was actually in jail.
Mm.
So for her, she was fearful she was going to lose her kids. So she stayed and continued to get beat night after night. So where
Wow.
she could keep her kids. And for what was programmed in my head at that time was like, why didn't you leave?
Mm.
I wasn't valuable enough to be safe, to
Right.
create a safe environment for myself. So there were a lot of limiting beliefs that were programmed. And through the healing processes that I do today and that I've worked through, called regenerating images and memory, and now I also channel energy from the divine. And that can be removed and replaced, and you can you create a new awareness around situations where you're like, oh wow, not true
Yes.
at all, not true at
Mm-hmm.
all. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
One of the things that I love about what you're saying too, one of my personal mantras has become life is not happening to me, it's happening for me. But it's
Mm.
very easy to say that. It's another thing to internalize it. And when I got let go, laid off from my last job, COVID-19 hit, and then civic unrest, all this political, challenges going on right now with, fighting on social media, everything that's going on, I realized, okay, this is not happening to me, it's for me, but my anxiety was over the top. And that's when I reached out to you specifically when there was a lot of protesting happening in my neighborhood, specifically helicopters overhead. I felt like I was in this war zone. And while that would give anybody anxiety, I just felt that it was even stronger for some reason. And taking in that thought, life is happening for me. What is being unearthed right now for me to process? And I didn't know what it was. So calling you really helped me process some of the pain of my past to understand this vulnerability and fear and where it comes from. And when I was able to, and you helped me do this, but rewire my memory, rewire my brain, I'm able to then respond differently now.